everybody, and welcome to the Mandalorian Season 3 Part 2 podcast. It's spoiler central, so go away if you haven't watched this show. Please. You know what you should do? You should go away, watch Rebels, watch this show, and then come back. I think that's a good idea.
But maybe don't watch
if you're
Rebels,
not already watching
because
Rebels.
we just talked about maybe we're going to do a Rebels watch-along
Yeah.
podcast. So maybe don't do that yet, or do. It's up to you, really. Just watch Star Wars.
It's up to you. And once you're happy, watch this podcast, because we're going to talk about all the spoilers of the full Season 3 now. We're all the way through. It's all over. But when last we talked about The Mandalorian, Ben and I were up to Episode 4. Sam, you weren't involved in that. It's halfway through the season. Do you want to, where would your mind at that point?
Journey
It was the
backwards
dragon episode.
4 weeks in your brain.
4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean... And I hate to be like...
No, someone has to.
Yeah, I know someone has to. That was the episode for me where I was the most kind of frustrated.
Yeah.
Because, like, it's entertaining to watch at the time. But when you look at it in, like, the bigger picture...
Yes.
It's like, okay, what are we building to? Like, what's happening? Like, what's the go? Where are these characters? Like, what's the end game here?
Didn't you see those little chickens fly into battle this in the finale? You know how they helped so much in the grand scheme of...
Wait, were they?
No.
Okay.
No, I was going to say, Jesus.
I wish.
I was like, where was that?
I wish fucking Jimmy Kimmel Jr. was on one of those little chicken birds just flying into
was
battle.
that the
That'd have been amazing. He was around.
Man.
That's very fair, and that's kind of, I know that's where you were for a lot of this season, Sam.
Yeah.
Kind of where we're going. Ben and I think we were a little bit hotter on the show. I think we were kind of just enjoying the weirdness and the hard lean it had done into the silliness of Star Wars, but totally understanding. I think we were kind of questioning where the show would go as well. So
And to be honest, I think we were in the minority, I would say. When we had those thoughts halfway through the season, I think a lot of people were kind of losing interest a little bit in the show.
Totally. But of course, we've got another 4 episodes. We can talk about them individually, but we might as well go full into where we've landed after this has all happened, because it's nice to just know where we're all sitting. And I just want to say, I'm fucking pissed off that this was a stupid purchase.
Do you know what, William? I was going to say to you, you need to stop buying merchandise from The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
They just break everything!
As soon as you hit buy, it either gets blown up or crushed.
I'm so annoyed.
But it's the symbol.
Every goddamn time.
It's the symbol
I know
of it
it's a
being
symbol.
destroyed.
Oh.
Yeah, but this is a symbol of $400, Ben.
Yeah.
So I can't get that back.
But Will, it's a... Think of it as a Rebels. Purchase, you know?
Oh, no.
It's not meant
I'll hold on to it. I mean, the wall of lightsabers I've got, they're all gone.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's the way of the Star Wars.
Yeah.
I am going to say that for me, this season and this season finale, I have probably no notes, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I fucking loved every second of it except the first episode. I still don't know what went wrong there. I mean, I do know what went wrong there. It was the Book of Boba Fett's episode 6, 7, and 8, or whichever. That's what went wrong. But I have 0 notes. This finale just was not at all what I thought was going to be happening. As I posted in the Discord, I had my wild, depressing theories about all the sad things they could do to characters. And it wasn't that. It was a wholesome, we did it finale, and I think that's cool because the Bad Batch was fucking depressing. Things like The Last of Us are depressing, and this show at no point...
Depressing.
And always depressing. A little, revolutionary, but definitely, depressing in tone. And I think this season at no point has kind of alluded to it being sad, and so I was really glad that it ended on such a high note, and we'll get into it, but it was an interesting finale in the fact that it wrapped up basically the 3 chapters of The Mandalorian so far in a bow that I didn't see coming. I didn't mean to say bow, but the bow with the W in it. I really fucking loved it, but I am ready to have a discussion with you boys. I don't know which.
Let's go down the
corner we should
sliding
go
scale because it's going to go me and then Sam, and I can kind of predict that. I enjoyed the end of this season, and I have no notes, but more in the sense that I feel like for the past 2-3 weeks, I've just not really paid any attention, and things have happened on the screen, and it's gone by. And by the end of it, I see what's happening, and I'm like, yep, that plot makes sense and is so horrendously predictable, but I'm so okay with it. I don't know what this show is to me anymore, to be honest. I think I definitely liked the first half of the season more because I thought it was doing some more interesting set pieces and doing more interesting, a bit more Monster of the Weeky type episodes like we know from The Mandalorian.
Yep.
I definitely feel as they got down into the nitty gritty of kind of going to Mandalore and retaking it and stuff. It didn't kind of... One of the things, I think episode 7 was quite strong, but I think part of my problem maybe with how this ended, and I still think I enjoyed it overall, but I think it didn't feel like it had the grandeur. It didn't feel grandiose enough for the fact that they were retaking Mandalore. Like, it felt so small scale, and I guess in a way it is supposed to be small scale, because there's not a lot of Mandalorians left. It is an abandoned planet and stuff. But I think the music did a lot of the heavy lifting for making it feel like it had a scale. I don't feel like...
massive props to Joseph Surley, who jumped in for Ludwig this season.
Totally.
He's fucking smashed it. So good.
But yeah, I don't feel like visually it kind of portrayed that enough, maybe in the last episode. I do think there was some really fucking cool fight scenes that we got in this final episode in particular. The fact that seeing
the Darth Maul doors, like the big red laser sequence.
The Darth Maul doors. God. The any time they were fighting the red cloak peoples, like the names are escaping my mind.
Praetorian
guards. And my favorite bit by far was when the bow and the armor were flying down, and it just in air melee combat is not something I feel like we ever see in Star Wars or in a lot of like sci-fi media, to be honest. And I think it was really cool to see that.
Because it's hard. Yeah. And it's hard to make it look good, and they fucking did it.
Totally.
It looks... just watching a pair of hammer and tongs just fly through the air.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the armor, it's like, oh my God.
I think my... Just before this has become a longer summary than I intended, but I think my one thing I will say is I think what this show has kind of done has like made a lot of theory crafters upset, and I get it because it's like I feel like there was heavy teasers for characters dying. I feel like there was heavy teasers for the armor being evil, all these kinds of different things, and what this plot ended up being was nowhere near that deep. People read into it, people got the theories, but I think it's also because they set up the theories and they set up red herrings, I guess, for it to be there, and then it kind of was, as I said earlier, just kind of the most basic level of what the plot could have been. And I think that's fine, but I do ultimately think it's probably holding the show back from being anything more than exactly what it is, which is something that you loved, Will, and ultimately I think I'll look back on it and I'll be like, yeah, that's nice. I don't think it's a thing I'm going to go back and rewatch a lot. Maybe I'll rewatch certain episodes for the set pieces, but I think it's kind of like it all ended up a bit more surface level than I was hoping, and there is some symbolism. I agree with you. I like that it kind of ended in a wholesome manner, which we don't get just in general from a lot of media at all these days. But yeah, I think I won't go on too much longer because we're going to chat more about it now. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Go on, Sam. Hammer and Tongus.
No, look, like I definitely enjoyed my time like while I was watching it, and there were so many like really cool scenes, like the episode that had Lizzo and Jack Black, like the scene where like he's chasing the droid and everything. Like, I thought that was great. I was like, oh, this is cool. And yeah, there were really like pretty much what you guys said in this last episode. The action scenes and fight scenes were amazing. My favorite thing about this last episode was probably the pacing. I loved that like things were constantly happening, and there wasn't too much time for them to just be like talking for 20 minutes. It was like there was something, to engage you like each time someone was on screen.
Surprisingly well paced, I'd say, given the length of
yeah,
the episode.
Because
I think a lot of us were worried that a 40-minute episode would not tie everything up, and then it kind of did
for sure.
very well.
Yeah, for sure. Because I saw like what the runtime would be this morning, and I was kind of like, ooh. I was like, really?
You weren't the only one.
Like my biggest gripe with it was that I just felt it to be a little bit predictable in ways for me. And then the way it all kind of ended, I was like, okay, that's nice. They're getting like a happy ending, but like, I don't know, I was annoyed that there wasn't... I mean, look, I may have just missed things because I'm an idiot, but I feel like I would have liked to have seen more stuff that overall added to the lore of the show. Like, just something to keep them going, I guess. I'm not sure if that makes sense.
You're not dumb. You're the cool nerd of the group, so you're just better than us.
But also to back Sam up on that, because as like you and I are very into like all the little bits and pieces that they're showing, and there's definitely stuff here. But I kind of agree where it feels like the last 10 minutes of this show is the show running out of gas, kind of coming to a bit of a splutter. And like it's not in a sense that it's like, I don't know if that's bad, but it just feels like for them to pick it back up at another point, which they may do, and I'm sure that's something we'll talk about. It feels like they're gonna have to kick it back into action because it just really slowed to a stop. You know?
This is the thing, right? I enjoyed... This is what I was talking to you about. I enjoyed this season for being the bigger, grandiose, like, arc that it was going for. But the end of this show did the thing that I was praying for, which is just the reboot button of being, all right, next season is season 1. Yep. We're going back to just... He's going out, he does a thing, and then he comes home. Like, I'm like, fuck yeah. That's exactly where I want this to go now. And maybe that'll only last a season. Maybe it'll only last 4 episodes. But... the idea that Din gets a reboot and gets to enjoy his life for a little bit, I totally agree that it's strange to happen in a show that's not over. Yeah. But also, I really do look at these 3 seasons as the 3 arcs. Yeah. Because this is the end of season 1 and 2 and 3. Yeah. Because the end of this thing is literally cyclical. Grogu does the fire thing again. Like, there's so much of this episode is about kind of bringing us back full circle. We end on Navarro in the same way season 1 did.
Like, they made a saga, really feels but like in a thing. Seasons?
In 3 seasons?
Yeah, no, that's maybe it's super interesting. I think it's more just. I think if anything, the flat feeling in me is just because I don't think I was expecting it, and so I'm in this weird spot of like, huh. Yeah, all right, especially with the Star Wars Celebration we had like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, where we're like, here's all their plans for this universe as well, this universe of characters. Then to see the show go here, I'm like, all right.
Yeah. It's fair. I guess they must have, the movie thing must have been a kick in the butt of being, we have this idea for the movie, and what we're doing in the shows is actually not it. Yeah. Like, this season is literally tying all the ends off because the movie idea is completely different to what this show was working towards. So this was kind of I feel like the tie-off.
Yeah, we're kind of leading into the conversation now, and then we can kind of go back and talk about episodes. But I guess I wanted to see where you guys feel, when you guys feel we'll see a next season of this. Because to me, part of the way this ends up reads to me as we're not going to see another season of Mandalorian for a couple years.
For a long while.
For at least 2 years, maybe 3 years. And I think a lot of the story they're going to be telling in this universe is going to be based in Ahsoka, is going to be based in Skeleton Crew, with characters coming in from this. But I think the fact that Mandalore now exists as a place again, where they can just like pull characters from and stuff, I think it definitely feels like, as you said, this is them kind of pulling on the brakes and being like, well, we've told all the story we need to for this until we get to the movie. So maybe we get a season of Din and Grogu doing stuff in between, but then I feel like there's other stories they're more intent on telling before they get to that point, which is kind of it's because no post credit teaser either, which is the big thing.
I mean, I was expecting a Boba somewhere in this season, at the very least. Cool. Yeah, but yeah, I'm intrigued. Like, I think the interesting thing that this season is set up is that Din doesn't need to take his helmet off and Pedro doesn't need to be on set. So really, they could shoot another season of this show this year and it comes out next year and it's just adventures. I don't know how soon. I feel like it's going to be this cycle. Like Boba Fett might be next year and we'll get a year off before we get more of this show.
Are we really getting more of this? This is a thing that has emerged very recently,
there's definitely a season 2 of Boba Fett.
Okay.
They're currently like rebuilding the Slave One and everything. So
fascinating.
Maybe he'll turn up in something else, but apparently we're getting more of that
Sam,
show,
thoughts?
which is you want more of that? On Tatooine?
I really don't know, but I mean, a thought that I do just want to say, as we keep on talking, a thing for me while I was watching that was really funny was whenever Bo would mention to the armorer that she saw the mythosaur in the waters, that was a story point for me where I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. Like, the armorer is eventually going to see it as well, and it's going to change the way they think about, like, their lore and, their oath and all that sort of stuff. So, like, nothing ever comes of it, obviously. Like, I would have loved to have, like,
I'm so sad, Sam. I'm so sad.
Yeah.
But like the fact that this thing basically winks at the camera at the end, I was just like, thank you, but no, thank you. I was like, cool.
I mean, what is that? Because like that's such a strange thing because through this season, we might as well talk about the mythosaur and the bathings and all that kind of thing. The mythosaur seems to be set up initially in the show as a thing that Din will eventually ride into battle holding the Darksaber. Okay. Like, that definitely feels like
reclaim
at the end of
Mandalore,
season
right?
2.
Like, it's the whole thing to, like, re-establish Mandalore.
Yeah. Like, it was spoken to him while he had the saber, and that felt like it. And then it kind of felt like that the bathing sequence, it's like, oh, it's going to be Bo that does it now. Like, that's going to be the end of this season. And then that doesn't happen. But now Grogu, of course, the Force has, like, a thing with being able to kind of talk to creatures and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, wait, are you setting up that Grogu in like 300 years? Like, are you going to make a film in 300? Yeah, he doesn't even ride it.
Grogu and the
just
Dust
hangs out
Bunnies,
with
but
it.
with the mythosaur.
Fuck yeah. Hell yeah. Imagine if that's the payoff.
Give me a Ghibli film, which is just that.
Grogu and the mythosaur. Real wild. I mean, as with so much of this show, I don't think anything's finished until it is.
I don't know, man.
There's
I'm so upset about that. I don't know why I am. I don't feel like I should be, but I am. I just think that it's like, it could be a budget thing. It could be like they're leaving it for future seasons. But I just wanted to see someone on a big, giant ass, weird looking dinosaur, because I'm sure plenty of you out there have seen concept art of what these mythosaurs look like. If you haven't, go look one up, because when people put it in a like actual rendered thing, one, it looks very goofy, but at the same time it looks cool as heck, and I just want to see that on my screen. And they feel like they were setting it up all season for a big payoff. There was even, in episode 7, there was a giant-ass dinosaur that came out of the ground that... Why? Why?
Wasn't it, though?
I was like...
I was waiting for it to jump up and then eat it.
Yeah.
Like, I was waiting for the thing.
Always a bigger fish.
Yeah.
But like with that as well, it's a thing for me where... like same with the episode where we had that was it was based around the scientist, and they mentioned like his science with like cloning and stuff. If that was just so that people understand why there's clones of old mate in these freaking tubes by the end of this, what a waste. What a waste.
That is one of the strangest things this season's done, is it's definitely pushed deeper into the Snoke territory. Like the opening of last week of episode 7 is very much discussing the fact that Moff Gideon's done it by himself, but we're definitely setting up the fact that the Imperial remnants are all working on that project. So Elisa Kane and all that kind of stuff, I don't think we're leaving in the past.
No.
That's definitely a further line to follow.
I mean, I hope so, because like that was another thing where I'm like, okay, this could lead to something like really interesting. But at the same time, it's like, why base a whole epised of the Mandalorian around something that could be a plot point for a whole different show?
Well, okay. Because we talked about this on the last podcast, and I agree with you.
We already talked about this.
And I agree with you that I really like that they could, and it is, in our opinion, Sam, linked to the story of the show well enough. However, it is a valid point because what is actually going to happen, and I'm pretty convinced of this at this point, is that story thread and potentially also the Jack Black stuff and all that is going to come in other shows, and people are going to be like, what the fuck? And it's going to be over there? And it's going to be a Book of Boba Fett situation again. So I think I think this worked better in this show than the Mandalorian episodes in Boba Fett worked personally. I think they've ridden themselves into that weird position again of like, that is an episode from another show, and that is a fantastic episode. It's still one of my favorite episodes of the season. But I think it is this weird point where I'm like, now looking at it, I'm like, well, it wasn't as tied into the season as I think I was probably expecting it to be. And so looking back on it, Will, I'm like, yes, I loved it. I think it, as we talked about, people didn't want it to exist within the show because it's about Din. I think it could have held that position better, but I think by the time the season kind of wrapped up, probably didn't hit that mark, and I'm a little bit worried that that's kind of going to happen again. Yeah,
I think that just on the whole thing of, people talk of filler episodes that don't fit in the show. I think people that have experienced and watched Rebels and Clone Wars are conditioned in a different way, and Bad Batch, conditioned in a different way to accept those things. Those shows do that every now and then. It's a story about something else just because the creatives are like, you know what? We want to tell that story. Whether it links anywhere, we're putting it here. So I think Ben and I are more accepting of it, but it is a totally a valid point. And it's just one of those.
It's like, for me, it's a very just like jarring thing. Because when I look at this series as a whole now, like that episode now just like gets highlighted amongst the rest of it. I'm like,
highlighted because it has the best space battles in the season.
Sure, we'll go with that, Will.
What space battles are in that episode?
It has it's the Bow Castle destruction and all that.
Yeah, like that's
the
right.
Fucking cool dogfight.
Like I'm not at all saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just that I'm like. I'm trying to wrap my head around where it needs to make sense.
Yeah, Ben and I are in the minority on basically a lot of our opinions on this season. Yeah, so you're right. Yeah. So don't feel bad. We'll come back around to general stuff, but we might as well get into episodes. The first one that we'll talk about is The Pirate, and I'm going to say it's my favorite episode of the season. I think it's the most fun.
Not the first episode. Yep. This is the second part of the podcast. This is episode 5, just to clear it up.
We talked about the other ones. You can go watch out the other one. Yeah. Episode. Well, let's confuse it even more. Let's talk about the first episode, chapter 21, The Pirate. This is directed by Peter Ramsey, who did Spider-Verse. I can feel it. The action is so fun.
I think
it's so vibrant.
We talked about in the last pod is confirmed to be doing an episode of Ahsoka, I believe, which is very cool.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna look great. I loved it. I love how much like Pelimoto, how much I've grown to love Navarro and Grief Karga, and I was so sure that was going to be something stupid in season 2 when it popped up, and it's turned into such a lovely place that I'm so excited it exists in Star Wars. I'm so fucking pissed that it's not Batuu. I'm pissed that Batuu isn't Navarro. Yeah. I want to go to Navarro at Disneyland and see a fucking Taika Waititi walking around. That's what that land should be. Yeah. But that's okay. I love.
I kind of agree. I think Navarro, if anything, is probably one of the big strengths of this season. Which I would, if you told me that in the first episode, I would have been freaking surprised.
The worst, yeah.
But they flesh it out really well, and I think it gets to a point where it's like the fact that it will likely be used as a home base going forward, and is used throughout this season as a home base for the characters, but has its own problems, has its own politics going on, which is this episode. I think is very good. It's still the funniest thing to me. I think we talked about this on the first part podcast, that it's just a little town on this whole planet. And I know that's kind of all of Star Wars, but it's particularly prominent with this place. It's like we've never seen anything else on this planet but this tiny ass little town.
When they all evacuated and he's standing on a rock talking to them,
there's 30 people.
Yeah, that was that out loud went, is that it?
Yeah.
That's everyone?
Yeah. No, but I like it. I love how goofy the pirates were. I love that we get I can never remember the race, but the I have spoken people.
Is it Nikto? Oh, no, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, they weren't. The Ugnaughts. Oh, yeah, the Ugnaughts. I
love that we get pirate Ugnaughts, and then we get other Ugnaughts later on in the season. And that character that flies off, whose name I can never remember, that's going to be showing up in Skeleton Crew.
We'll remember soon.
But like, you know, it's cool like that he's getting a bit of a story, and I'm sure we'll see more of him soon. So yeah, I like this. Again, this is one of those episodes that is kind of setting up for a new season, but does a better job of fitting it within the overarching story of Mando, I think. And that's really cool. But yeah, I agree. It was pretty good.
Yep.
Sam, did you hate it?
Did this?
No.
We just need you to validate our thoughts or not.
I've just dug the biggest hole for this whole podcast, haven't I? No, this was because like this was after the one with the big chickens. So
yes,
wait, wasn't? Yeah. So like I was at a bit of a low point. But then like I really enjoyed this episode because I thought the action was great. I thought the pacing was great. And it had that very classic like Mando vibe for me of him helping out the little guy. And doing like proper like Mando jobs, you know?
Totally.
So yeah, no, I like it was one of the episodes that I really enjoyed. I thought it was great. So there you go, guys.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. We got
Vane is the pirate guy. And then the other thing I was going to say is we get really...
Is Zane?
Vane.
Oh, I thought it was Zane. I was like, wow, One Direction's in here? I was like, cool.
He's in.
We get a really cool little bit of like fleshing out of the New Republic kind of bureaucracy and...
That's
Mr.
right.
Kim like going to the New Republic.
Oh, yeah.
And
I loved that.
That little scene was great. I loved that little scene.
That was,
and
great.
Elia Kane, I can't remember her actual name. I think I got pretty close. Elia Kane, I nailed it the first time. I thought I did. I thought she did really well in that scene as well. I thought she was really interesting up until episode 7, which we'll talk about, when she was just, again, as I said for the last episode, when it was the most predictable outcome for what she was.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay.
But that scene is also one of my favorite scenes, and maybe why I love the episode so much, is that Mr. Kim is standing next to her and says the words, everything's connected. I think he says everything's connected, and no, that's not important. And I was like, fuck, right in the hearts of everyone that watched episode 3. It's so good. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
But that also was the episode we get to see Zeb, and I don't think any cameo will ever top that. No. It was just so good.
Yeah.
Phenomenal app. Or maybe there's other cameos that might top it in chapter 22, Guns for Hire, which is, of course, the Jack Black and Lizzo episode. I love it. I wasn't expecting it to also be the episode with Christopher Lloyd. Like, we knew he was going to be in it, but the fact that then he turned up, I was like, oh, you've spent everything.
Yeah, just on this.
Yeah. Sam, you go
I think it's really fun. And also...
After Will.
Yeah, please. No. Go for it, Sam.
Yeah, cool. We'll get all of the hate out. No, I'm just joking. No, yeah, like I wasn't like too hot on the episode overall, only because it was a thing for me again, where I was just like, okay, but now we've only got like an episode or 2 left. Like, what are we doing? But as an isolated episode, it was enjoyable. I had a lot of fun with it. I mentioned at the beginning that like the scene where him and the droid like having that big like, you know, like chase. I thought that was all great. Yeah. Like it was all sick. And like, man, that droid's got some pace on him. I was like, damn.
What a unit.
I love Mando just kicking the shit out of droids.
Yeah.
It was so good.
It was so good. But like with like them using like these really like, you know, like these actors that are like well known and like names that everyone knows nowadays. When they first came on, I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. After about 5 minutes, I was like, I know why Star Wars tends to not do this. Because there is a thing where like in Star Wars universe, they tend to not use like massive actors because it can take you out of what you're watching. It did a little bit for me. And it also
tends to grate on people.
Yeah. So like the only gripe is that it did just take me a little bit out of what I was watching, because I was really just seeing them for who they are as people, not for them for who they are as like the people they were playing.
And it didn't help that Christopher Lloyd was basically dying on screen when he was in his scene. Yeah. So it was like, I don't know if he's gonna. Like it's just he's so.
Man, like genuinely, I was like, look, good on him for the effort here. Yeah, but like, man, they must have paid him so much to do this.
I didn't know Christopher Lloyd was in this episode, and when I realized it was him, because I was like, I was like, hey, I recognize that voice, and then it took a few moments, and I was like, no, and I was like, I thought he was dead. He can't be alive. He's too old for that.
This has to be a CGI.
Like, legitimately.
Yeah. Oh,
So
imagine.
I looked it up and I was like, oh, it is him. It's astonishing to me that man is still alive. But, he did a good job in this episode. And I will say, it's nice to have calls back to the Separatists and nice to have calls back to the fact that this galaxy has undergone so many changes in ruling style, in leadership, in everything, in the very small space of time. And this guy is like living back in the glory days when he was a separatist. It's like, it's all changing too much. I can't deal with it. And I'm like, honestly, I get it. There would be people like that because we have people like that in real life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All the grandparents out there.
Yep.
We're talking about you.
Yeah. Back in my day, to be racist.
Yeah, not anymore.
No.
It was cool hearing the words Count Dooku in pics of media.
Totally.
He was about to say Anakin Skywalker as well before they fucking cut him off. Yeah. He was so close to saying it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because this is kind of the thing where people talk about filler episodes and like one of, I think, the slightly more valid criticisms of filler episodes within this show is that it is an 8-episode season versus your animated shows, which have a lot more runtime to have those filler episodes to kind of go to different places. But at the same time, if we look at this season as a whole, was there 2 more episodes of story? You take out those filler episodes, was there 2 more episodes of story they could have told? If we look at like how they ended up telling the story, I'm really not sure there was. And I think, again, we're talking about one of the strengths of the first season of Mando and stuff is Din and Grogu kind of going off on these adventures, which are really random, different little bits and pieces. And I loved this as possibly the wackiest of them yet. It's very clearly Bryce Dallas Howard directed, because if you go back and watch her season 1 episode, it's got a surprisingly similar vibe. And I'm coming to really like her directing style. I think outside of the cameos, which I acknowledge for a lot of people would have taken you out of it, it nearly did for me, but I kind of just embraced it and turned my brain off.
I think it helped as well that I watched the Mario movie that day, and genuinely, I watched it that day, and obviously his voice was like rolling around my head. When the doors opened, I was just like, oh, he sounds like...
And I think, but like, I think overall, if we're able to remove that from the episode, which I acknowledge many people can't, I actually think it's a really strong story that was told. I love, as you said, I love the bit where Din just gets to kick droids and it looks like therapy for him. It's great. I love even like the little bit of story we get going into the droid bar and then kind of talking about what it's like to be a droid. It's a little bit weird being like, we're okay being your servants and stuff.
We really want to be slaves.
We love working for you.
But then, but I will say, like, it's probably wasn't handled the best, but I think there was a heart to it that I really liked.
There was,
and I think that's cool.
It's definitely it's the hardest thing to do is to separate fiction and the real world. Yeah, like they're silly little droids talking about how they feel. It's obviously they're human in a way, but like, totally.
Totally. We did at the end of this episode, and I will say the little end of this episode, which is tacked on, was just from a completely different episode. It was so funny. It was so funny. They just hard cut out of that story into like Bo talking to all the Mandalorians and stuff. But
speaking of in-air fighting, the fight that she and Axe Wolves had is amazing. Yes. Like, it's so brutal. Really cool. When he like blasts her onto the deck of the top of the ship and she just breaks her spine. It's like,
I think that's one of the things I really loved about this season that we haven't really got in other seasons is seeing Mandalorian combat and seeing the fighting style, like the in-air fighting style. Because a lot of Star Wars combat happens on the ground or happens as Jedis are flipping, and it's a very different there's a weightiness to Mandalorian combat Mandalorian that we kind of got in this, and then with the Stormtrooper Mandalorians later, it kind of really doubled down on that kind of combat style, which I think was sick. But I will say, the thing I was going to mention is they finally call back, and I called it, I think when we did the first part of this podcast, they finally called back to the fact that when Din originally goes to Mandalore and goes and bathes in the waters, but gets caught by that guy first in that brutal scene. And gets like the blood sucked out of him. Goes to the waters, gets caught by that guy. The weird spidery guy that some people thought was General Grievous, but definitely isn't. I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. It literally says a cyborg creature. I'm not sure anyone knows what it was.
No.
But anyway, there's a very clear shot in that episode where Din gets the Darksaber removed from him, and I thought they were just going to ignore it. I legitimately thought after that episode, and nothing was done of it, because he was with Bo at the time, and he was like, "Here's your." I thought he was just going to be like, "Here's your Darksaber. I lost it."
You did it.
But they were like, "No," and then Din, clearly a master of timing, was like, "No, this is going to be important. I'm going to come back to this at another point when it's really, really necessary." And he pulls it out at this point and being like, "Hey, just in case you forgot, it's not actually mine." And I'm like, it's so dumb and stupid. But
he's also like, "Hey, I'm gonna wait until after they fight for 5 minutes."
That was the other part. So he's a master of timing, but not quite. He could have avoided it.
Well, no, he likes a good fight. He just wanted to see it happen.
Yeah.
But it's funny you say that in terms of it calling back to things, because I truly believe that season whatever, whenever we open on Mandalore again and it's restored, I truly believe Jack Black will be on Mandalore advising on the fixing of a domed planet. I don't think it was a mistake or a mere whatever moment to go, we've gone to a domed planet where Mandalorians are very exposed to the fact that this is a functional domed planet.
Right.
And I'm like, I think that, and he was kind of like, call me whenever you need help. I think that there's a setup there.
Sadly for many people, he will be back. Happily,
we'll
I think
see a
for
bit more of Jack Black.
Also, I'm really happy for Lizzo. Like Lizzo is a huge Star Wars fan, and like I acknowledge for some people it's this thing where like you get taken out of it and you're like, oh, this is someone I know who's like uber famous. But I think it's really cool for her. She literally talked about how this was kind of her dream, and the fact that she got to be in a Star Wars episode is so cool. And like she did a good job. She did a good job. And I think same for Jack Black, he's just a massive nerd. So I think it's like as much as we can be like, oh, it's like pulls us out of it, it's kind of nice for them that they get to play this role in the world that I shortly.
It also fucking put Bill Murray to shame in Quantum Mania.
Oh yeah.
Like it's basically the same role, and it's like that's how you do it, Bill. That's how you do that thing. Fucking God, what a waste. But yeah, and obviously one of the other things this season, and we didn't really touch on it on the first half because it didn't feel like it was happening, but now where we're at, Din slowly but surely is removed from the central protagonist role, and this episode is where he loses literally the only interesting thing left on his person. And it's funny, it's sad, but I don't think, despite adoring the character and wanting him to be the protagonist, I don't think at any point in this season I really was sad that he wasn't in front and center. I think purely because of Katie Sackhoff's performance as Bo-Katan, if a lesser actor was in that role, I'm sure it would feel bad. But like the minute she takes up the lead, I was like, no, cool. I want you to do this. What an
inspired casting all those years back. Like, honestly, they couldn't have known. But goddamn.
What a lucky call. Because, obviously she ends up becoming the ruler and keeping the Darksaber. And I don't think I had a problem. I'm glad that it does seem like it'll return to him, at least leading a greater portion of the show going forward. But I was shocked that it happened, that the saber was passed to another person, but we'll get to kind of where that all ends up.
Yeah,
anyway.
I think I'm kind of really glad Din took the back seat, actually, because I think if they'd gone down another line and been like, no, Bo's not worthy enough, Din's the person that'll actually reunite them, I don't think it would have had the same weight to it, because I think Bo-Katan, and especially for me and Will, is a character that has a lot more history, and it has a lot more value for her to hold this position, and being them doubling down on that and being like, no, Din's not the person to hold this role. This has to be Bo to do it.
It would have ended up being another predictable thing of the reluctant hero.
Yeah, totally. And so it's cool to give credit where it's due. Like this was possibly a less predictable move, but a better one that they made. And I think it's also the fact that Din is your like classic Din is the cliched protagonist in so many ways. And we talk about that in all the we talk about how Mario is not the protagonist of Mario, and I was talking to these guys about Fast and Furious before. We'll get back to that comparison. But like Dominic Toretto, Vin Diesel is not the protagonist of Fast and Furious, or like they are, but they're not. They're not what makes it good. And it's like that's maybe being a bit too harsh on Din, but it is this thing of like the fact that they were confident enough to have him take the back seat for a little bit, acknowledging at the end of the show that it is his show and like we'll likely get more of that character and that kind of vibe at another point, but allowing kind of him both, like, from a writer's room perspective, acknowledging that people might want to break from that, but also from an in-world perspective, Din acknowledging that he needs to be in service of someone else for now.
Yeah.
Was, I think, very...
He literally acknowledges it's not his show.
Totally.
In this season.
Totally.
He's just like, nah.
He's like, what?
This isn't about
It's your
me.
song to write or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
I thought that was a very good line. That's kind of like leading into episode 7, where they go back to Mandalore. Very quickly, because I think the episode before they're like, oh, we need to rebuild Mandalore. Oh no, 2 episodes before they're like, we need to rebuild Mandalore, and they're like, well, we need more people, so they get some more people in the next episode.
Just a couple more
like
people, just one clan.
And then they go back to Mandalore the next episode. Oh, and they just happen to find a few more people there, but it's still not a lot of people. That's the funny thing.
No.
And they bring the reinforcements in the last episode, and I'm like, still not a lot.
Did you? Did you need it? They bring the reinforcements, and then Axe is like, I'm just going to throw this at the ground. Yeah. Just everyone get out.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
But yeah, we get chapter 7 and 8. We might as well combine them. Both by Rick Famuyiwa. I'm never going to... Fucking hell. It's too late for me to nail this man's name. Go on, Ben.
Rick Famuyiwa.
Famuyiwa.
I think that's probably close.
Yeah. Miles's buddy.
Yeah.
That's a reference. Very cool. I'm so glad that this man has taken up more ownership of this show.
Yeah.
I kind of would love if John and Dave kind of take a backseat, especially in the writing department. Probably should just talk about that at the end, because this show is the worst written thing in the fucking galaxy.
We can talk about it now. This show is horrendously written.
It's so bad. Like, I'll sing its praises to the end of the earth, but like if everyone wore helmets and didn't talk, it would be a better show.
Yeah, I think it's more on Favreau than Filoni, because Filoni has written plenty of good stuff in the past.
Yeah.
Not to name names, but looking at all the writers for this season, Jon Favreau was on every episode. So I'm just saying, maybe work on that a little bit.
Boot fits.
Yeah. But yeah,
that's true. Because Dave wrote the Jedi, which was the Ahsoka rep, and I don't remember any dialogue sucking in that.
Totally. And I think I think that's kind of the thing where I think, like, the fact that I can still enjoy this show and still feel fondly about it, despite the fact that, like, as even we can acknowledge, well, it was like the dialogue is actively horrible in this show. It's so bad.
Is there like a moment that, like, if you think about how shit it was in terms of like the writing, that like it stands out to you too?
I mean, look, I'm going to shit on episode 1 even more, but when they're walking through the town, Grief's like, why are you here, Mando? And he's like, I'm looking for a droid part. And he's like, okay, I also need a marshal. Okay, I think about that. I really need to find that droid part. Come up to my office. This is the map of the city. It's like, what the fuck is happening? What are you doing right now? Like, what is the dialogue achieving? Why are you just, we're here because this school used to be a bar. Well, it's not anymore. It used to be a bar. What?
Yeah.
What the fuck is happening?
Like, it's not like a natural, like, you know, like no normal person is going to reply like that.
I think other than Will's example there, I'm not sure if I could pick out a specific example, but it's the amount of times that the show hangs on the ends of sentences really weirdly that I just can't get over, or just one-liners really weirdly, where someone will say something and there's just too long of a gap in between, or there's just an awkward...
It's like a Kingdom Hearts dialogue.
Awkward end point for the scene. It happened both times someone goes up to the flag, the big Star Destroyer ship. Both times, the Armorer first, and then Woves, both times they go up there, it happens where they go up there and they're like, hey, I'm calling in. I've got people that need rest. It just cuts. Yeah. That's where it just stops. That's what and that's where people read into this and are like, oh, it's suspicious. Like there's something going on here, because there's no resolution to that ever.
No, and when he got up there, even the captain that was on the ship, he like very weirdly walked away, and I'm like, is he a baddie? And I'm like, I don't think so, but like he did seem like.
But then again, when Axeware's up there, he's the same. It's like, oh, I'm coming up, you guys need to go down, and they're like, okay, but then the guy's just like, and then he goes down, and then we.
Oh yeah, true.
And then we realize the Armorer is with them, and I was like, oh, the Armorer's still on the ship. There's going to be some weird shit that goes down, and then it was like. No, she's just with them. But she didn't go down with them. She wasn't in. You know, if she was in the ship with the people that she sent up there, you'd think she'd be on the main deck because she's pretty important. But no, she wasn't until they got in the ship when she was there. So maybe it's not just a dialogue thing. Maybe there's some weird continuity stuff going on here. But
it's a weirdly crafted thing.
Yeah.
Look, before we even get into these last 2 episodes, I want to talk about what I think this season was at some point.
Yeah.
Because that's a very important thing. And because I think genuinely we kind of know that Disney changed the Book of Boba Fett to include a lot of
just
this
before
season,
you do that, to be clear, my hair has gotten more disheveled over the episode because I've gotten more unsure about what this show is.
You're falling apart at the seams. So what I can only assume is that, of course, if you've seen the Book of Boba Fett, we get the reuniting of Din, we get some like Jedi Luke stuff. I can see the opening of this season being literally starting with Mando going to the whatever planet Luke's on and standing there and being like, I can't see him. I can't do this. Then cut to basically the episode we got where he goes and like has his little mission where he kills some Gamorreans and all of that takes place. He gets the ship. And at the end of that, there's no Boba Fett stuff. He then goes... Maybe the armor has now got a home because he said that this is a thing. That all happens. He goes to Mandalore by himself, but with R5. Like, he takes R5 with him, and he gets captured. And he's like, yo, R5, go get Bo. Because that actually is the logical thing to do and would change nothing about the story. R5 go gets Bo. That all happens. That all is still set up. And then my true belief is that it's episode 4, the dragon one, when he sees... Paz Vizsla and his son, he's like, fuck, man, I can't keep doing this. Like, I need to go get Grogu. And then the next episode is almost a Yoda and Grogu episode where Grogu eventually decides, and then he flies to the Mandalorian place. And then the series continues. But that's where I think that storyline existed, like Paz and the son existed purely to mirror Din being like, fuck, I need my son. And then that is the payoff at the end of the season of, I've got my son, and he is my son. Because within the confines of the story that's in this season, Din doesn't contemplate Grogu being his son at any point. There's no... The element of him being removed from him and then him needing his family doesn't exist because that whole plot line existed in Boba Fett. So...
That makes a lot more sense. Why isn't that what this is? Like, I'm
Disney,
still
man.
baffled. Well, but like, I just want to know who made the decision, and I don't think we'll ever know. But I'm still baffled because it's not even like. Am I crazy? Or was Book of Boba Fett like a weird number of episodes? Like, it wasn't a.
It was 7.
Yeah. It feels like.
Yes, that's weird.
That show was 5 episodes.
No, but it's like
they changed the
could
show.
have been that, and like why?
Yeah.
And like we talk about the filler episodes in here not feeling like there was more story to tell, like it seems to me like you've just kind of worked out how that works into this, and it's kind of this weird thing of like
totally.
I just how
it also
how?
like
That's all I've got.
It also solves the, and not that I think that it needed solving, but it solves the Din not being the central character.
Yeah.
Like that existing within this season would have served both characters in a wonder. Like Bo is looking for her home and he's looking for his family, and it kind of would have had anyway. That's where all that is. So if you're like, if you're kind of contemplating what's missing in the show, I'm like 99% certain that's what it is.
Yeah.
And thus, I think that's would have helped the death of Paz Vizsla, which obviously happens in this episode, chapter 7, chapter 23, episode 7.
Which I enjoy it.
It worked.
Sorry, I enjoyed. I didn't do it. I enjoyed
I love when that big boy went down. Fuck him.
No, I like that Vizsla had his moment. It was always very weird to me that they made a very pointed like fact out of that he was a Vizsla, which is like in Clone Wars and Rebels are like the bad Mandalorians, the bad group of Mandalorians. And so it was always very weird to me. They made a big point out of that and then kind of leaned into it with kind of the way he butt heads against them. Yeah. But again, credit where it's due, where they didn't do what was expected. They kind of pushed back against that. And he was like, they leaned into it real hard, especially when they're about to go off to Navarro. They were like, he's gonna kind of like fight against Din for this, and he's already had a fight against Din in Book of Boba Fett. Which
wouldn't that be great in this season? Maybe that would have paid off in that moment.
But like, I like that they kind of like that Din and him have this bonding moment, and he's like, no, I believe in this cause a bit more, and I believe that this is the thing we need to do. And again, the theme of this season being Mandalore needs to come together despite its differences. The fact that his death was a very much an acknowledgement of all the factions of Mandalore throughout Star Wars, not just this show kind of coming together. And now I look at it, that's why they made the point out of his name. But it was, I mentioned it in the last podcast, it was sticking out as very weird to me up until that point, why that was such a clear point. And now we just have his shitty little son who shows up in the last episode for no reason. Just for Jimmy Kimmel to be happy.
God damn it.
It was so weird.
I hope we never see him again. Like, I think I'm glad that Paz and Din made up, because there was a part of me that thought he was being set up as the like, fuck you, you killed my dad, totally. My dad died for you. Right. But the show ends in such a way that it's like, no. That's not where we're headed.
What a twist though if that does come back. Like in a couple of years to come, he's like, remember me?
yeah. Oh, in the Rey film, he just comes in and tries to kill Grogu. It's just like, fuck you. But yeah, no, it is cool. I still crave a reference of Duchess Satine. I don't know how the show has gone this long without it, but it's fine.
My dream, survive. Which is, it's never going to happen. My dream is that the armorer takes her helmet off one day and it's Duchess Satine. Or a relative. It's Kate Blanchett. Yeah, or like just a relative of Duchess Satine. Or like that is like...
Sam, just for reference, I didn't just pick Kate Blanchett on my ass. The model is based on her because Satine is obviously Moulin Rouge. They took the name from her. So they have designed... Well, sorry. Right. I don't know. They took the name from Moulin Rouge. Not related
and
to
Sam,
Kate Blanchett.
Do you know who Duchess Satine is?
Yeah.
Wait, are we talking about from Moulin Rouge?
No. From the Star Warses, there's a character called Duchess. No. Yeah, there's a character called Duchess Satine who was ruler of Mandalore and was also
famously the only person Obi-Wan has ever loved.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Really made him forsake his vows as a Jedi Master.
Wow.
Yeah. It would have been good to have that in the prequel movies, but we didn't.
Is that in the animated series?
Yeah. It's a good fucking arc, man.
The animated series are where it's at. We're not just saying this because we're big old nerds. They actually tell
Hey, I know that you're not just saying this. It's okay.
There's some good stories in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was hoping for something. Maybe she'll have a little photo. Bo-Katan will have a little photo of Kate Blanchett on her desk, and that's the reference we'll get. She's just got a little office on Mandalore, and she's like, "That's my sister."
But like, my thing is, the armorer could take the helmet off, and it could be her because Bo-Katan has very clearly not aged, so she could also have not aged.
Yep. Well, that's the thing. Do we? Oh no, I don't want to say it. Do we think whenever we come back, it skipped like 10 years or something?
And like, she hasn't aged.
I feel like it should.
Yeah. That's why I was like, she hasn't aged now. Why would she age in 10 years? Like that feels like a time skip of some sort.
Yeah,
is probably where we're headed.
And
and maybe one that is like noticeable.
Yeah,
and not one that you have to like figure out on like a TikTok.
Well, I can see it being
breakdowns.
Yeah, and going back to these timelines they put out, and going back to the old thing that we talked about, Star Wars Celebration. They put out a clear, pointed timeline of there is the Rise of the New Republic, and then there is the New Republic, and then there is Rise of the First Order as two things. Yep. And I think the very clear boundary there is New Republic First Order. So I think any time jump that they would do would have to be an implication that this is now set in a Force Awakens world almost. Like First Order is in control at this point. And I think that's the only way they can make that work. Because I think otherwise it's just not obvious enough. Because as we said, the actors don't age. Like I'm convinced at this point that every Mandalorian as like a race of people, it lives to like 500.
You know what it is? It's genuinely, I reckon, like...
It's something in the waters.
That's it. They drink that fucking water. I think it's the helmet. If you wear a helmet that often, your skin's going to be fucking protected.
It's true. Yeah. Your hair's going to be 100%. Shit.
I think it's that.
Your hair will be rough, which is why it's phenomenal every time Bo-Katan takes off her helmet. It is just perfect hair. But...
Well, the shape of a helmet.
But yeah, you're right. There's not going to be any wear on the face. So.
Sun damage and stuff. Yeah, maybe it's a bit of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so chapter 23, they land on the planet, they do the thing. There's like some gorgeous action sequences.
Yeah.
Like Ben, we've talked about it, Sam, I think we do as well. This show uses the volume in a way that no one else is able to do. I don't know how, or like they're definitely using a few more sets this season, but when they all like are running from the fire creature and it's just an army of people, it's like it feels real in a way that I feel like it feels real. It feels action heavy in a way that Star Wars hasn't really felt in a long time.
Yeah.
Like
it goes back
outside of space combat.
We talk about industrial light and magic, the magic part of that. We talk about that a lot, and that's why Star Wars has such like a pull. And this does like genuinely when I watch this show, knowing that they're using the volume, that's what it feels like. It feels like there's some kind of wizardry going on here because we've seen so much stuff at this point that has not used it well. That it's just like seeing this show and being like trying to work out like this doesn't make sense that that's how you're doing it. And like there's moments. There's obviously moments where those scenes are a bit more noticeable, but it's very well done. We also haven't even mentioned the Grogu droid.
Oh yeah, that's right. No, fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Also amazing that it's already gone. I like that it's already gone.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Already done. But yeah, really, really cool. Really nice, like bringing it full circle for Din hating droids and the care of all that. Like it's a lovely, like, sort of mean, as much as I agree that it's weird that this show has ended, it's like they did a really good job this season of wrapping up so many little loose threads. Not that there was a loose thread of the droid that literally exploded into tiny pieces.
Yeah, it didn't need to be a loose thread. They loosened the thread. There we go. I got there.
It was already loose.
It was a tight thread, and then they loosened it at the start of the season.
That's right. They gave some slack to that thread.
Gave some slack to that thread because they did need to be established, and then they were like, "Oh, I want this droid back." And the first episode of this season, and then again went to get R5 the next episode, so we were like, "What the fuck's going on here?"
Yeah.
Because I genuinely thought that one would never come back, but it did. And in a silly way, which is kind of fun. I liked it. It was very silly. It was so silly. Every time you see that droid moving as well, you're like, that's not natural. It's going so fast. But I love it. I love it because it's the same thing in the final episode we get when the little mouse droids are going away, and it's clearly just sped up footage. It's that classic Star Wars thing of when stuff is moving, but it's so obviously like it's just like 2 times footage, and it's so great because anytime you see Grogu in the background and like the Mandalorians are going fast and they're like, keep up, he's just going
it's just fucking insane.
I will say that I'm very surprised that they didn't use that at Disney to like sell more merchandise. Like the fact that I have not seen a Grogu in a droid.
They will.
Imagine,
now they will.
Yeah. Imagine if instead of prams at Batu, they just have an army of IG-12s. You just strap your kids into little IG-12s and they just waddle around.
Shit, yeah. As if that's not going to be like a cosplay that like some dad does.
Yeah. That'll be great.
Could you imagine?
That'll be very sweet.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. But no, I agree. I'm glad they got rid of it quickly and then brought him back.
Yeah.
Also weird.
There was a moment earlier when we were talking about Navarro where it hit me and I'm like, wait, so Mando is now living on Navarro and could very easily be the Marshal, but instead he was like, I'm going to rebuild that fucking droid. It's like, no, do your job. Do your job, man.
No, but it's also funny because it's like he is acknowledging the thing that you're acknowledging, Will, which is that you just want the show to go back to him doing weekly things, and he's acknowledging exactly that, being just like literally when he goes to, again, I'm going to call him Mr. Kim because I can't remember the character's name, but Tava. When he goes to the New Republic pilot guy and is like, I'm going to be a bounty hunter, but not because I'm going to be a good one this time, and he's like, oh, I can't do that. And it's just the silliest thing of like, oh, okay, so as you said, it's just a hard reset on what this show is. Yeah. But in the most... this show has these weird nods to like meta of what people want sometime that we've talked about a little bit. And this is another one of those that I'm just like, you are speaking for a lot of people right now.
Like wasn't Peli Motto earlier, like it's like his name's Grogu, she's like, are you sure? Like it's I'm not she says I'm not calling him that. It's like amazing. Love it. I can't remember where I was going with that. Oh, I was going to say just on, and we're skipping around these last two, but there's a lot of bits to discuss. But when he talks to Mr. Kim, I'm going to call him that because that's who he is. He'll always be Mr. Kim. He's like, I'm going to do this thing. And the thing is, they set up in episode 7 that there's a bunch of warlords and shit. So I'm like, is season 4 Far Cry? Like, is it going to be Din just going around the galaxy and chipping away at like all the different head honchos and being like, you're dead.
Like,
he's just got a map.
So there's Thrawn in Ahsoka, clearly.
Yeah.
And then is Mandalorian now, Shadow of Mordor style? They're each all these little Nemesis system bosses that he's got to go and pick off. Speaking of video games,
Thrawn.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they all come together in the movie for Thrawn. Oh, man.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking, man.
That's cool.
Interesting.
I like that.
Because I also just, I adore that little moment.
Moff Gideon's dead, finally?
Nah. There's no fucking chance. Nobody. He was in like a proper like I'm not dead pose. Like it was just being engulfed in flames. I'm like,
he comes back, I'm going to be so annoyed.
Literally, there was a room of clones. He's got another room.
I know, but I was already bored of the fact that he was back.
Yeah.
I was like, I had enough of you from how many years ago was it I saw you?
In Breaking Bad.
You're just doing the same shit. Yeah. I'm like, come on, man.
My funniest thing about him being back in this is he doesn't do anything. He's back for literally no reason.
He just walks around.
They could have had literal... It's clearly just because they wanted Giancarlo Esposito. They could have had literally anyone else do the role he did in this season, and it would have been totally fine.
But it's the thing that I love is this season is the end of what we've been doing. Like, hopefully he is dead. But just when Din's like, if we don't kill him now, he's going to come back. Like, he literally is like, we need to fucking kill him. Otherwise, we're going to see him again.
Totally. And I guess the thing
he's like...
I guess the thing in the other episode is they, like, very clearly let him go, which I think is the main thing.
Yeah.
Whereas this time he goes into flames. But, we've seen Darth Maul get chopped in half. So
I just want to see a room full of Giancarlo. Like, I know we did see that, but like living, breathing. It's what I said to you, Ben. This season's Doctor Who, and Giancarlo is the master. Like, he literally did the master race thing from the end of David Tennant's shows. Like, that's literally what that scene was. And I was saying to Ben, if you change some words at the start of the other episode where he's like, we need to kill the Mandalorians, it's the master talking to like the Daleks and the Cybermen being like, we need to kill the Doctor once and for all. It's like, this show has become Doctor Who and I fucking love it.
Speaking of
that's insane
show comparisons, or other comparisons to other media, I'm going to then throw back, Sam, the comparison I gave to Will, which is also going back to the discussion we had before this podcast, which is this show is just Fast and Furious, the Star Wars show, in that it is a 6 or 7 out of 10 every episode. It's rarely ever better than that, but it's, a fun time.
Like how confident he was in that title.
Yep. It's 6 or 7 out of 10 every time. It's very rarely higher than that. And, we enjoy it, though. It's a good time. It's got the most absurd lore that doesn't really make a lot of sense, but we follow along anyway. And it's got great action set pieces. It's just Fast and Furious. Is this because I've been watching all the Fast and Furious films in the past month? Perhaps, but I also think it's an apt comparison. So it's Fast and Furious crossed with Doctor Who crossed with Star Wars. There you go, everyone. We cracked
it. You just need both of those franchises to involve time travel, and then we're set.
I mean,
I'm sure we're fucking close with Fast and Furious.
100%. 100%
we have to be close. I mean, I don't have much else to say about this season. That felt like a pretty good wrapping up point. Is there any other notes or anything anyone wants to touch on?
Not really. I will just add, like, in the last 2 episodes, any, like, wide shot of, like, all the Mandalorians, like, together, like, flying or fighting, amazing.
Beautiful.
Loved it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I've replaced, and this is one for the video watchers, but I've replaced my background to that concept art, which was
cool.
Just an awesome. I mean, I loved that whole set.
The concept art in the credits is one of my favorite things that this show does, and I love that they can still do it. So good. My thing, you briefly mentioned it earlier, but I did actually really love the moment where Grogu shields them from the fire. Because I thought it was going to be another one of those weird moments where it just kind of cuts and they're alive, which I talked about earlier, of having those weird kind of writing / directing choices that don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But instead, it was a very clear moment for Grogu to step forward and save both of them, and had impact. Like, I was sitting on the couch with my housemate Jay, who has not watched any of the season, like barely any Mandalorian, does not give a shit about Star Wars. And I was like, look at what he's doing. And they were like, yeah, that's sick. That's actually really cute. Yeah. And I was like,
yeah,
it is. Like, it hit in a way that it was very cheesy, but at the same time, it was also, it was also delightful.
That whole sequence was so cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm so happy that it was. Yeah. And I know there's going to, like, full credit to anyone that hates this season, because you're allowed to. Like, it's one of the most obviously divisive seasons of a Star Wars thing ever. Like, it really takes a hard turn, and if that's not what you're here for, it's Andor. It's like, I wasn't there for Andor, and that's fine. If you're not here for this sort of thing, that's also totally fine. Yeah. But when Moff Gideon's like, I'm gonna kill you now, and she's like, nah, Mandalore together, and fucking Din runs in with his twin guns, and I was like,
Grogu flips around in the other room.
Grogu just is just jumping around
just
all the
pushing
place.
people as Mando fights with him. It's great. You can't hate that. I'm sorry, I take back what Will said just then. You can't hate. If you have a soul, you can't hate that.
You can't hate that. You can't hate. I think my moment of the entire season, and we might as well do moments and favorite episodes. Yep. So my favorite ep is definitely Ep 5, which is the Siege of Navarro. Love that. But my favorite moment was when Din is in the laser section and he goes to grab the gun and the guy falls into the pit before he can grab the gun. Like, because he's trying to get weapons to be able to fight the guys.
Yes.
And he knocks the guy, and before he can actually grab the gun, he falls in the pit. I was like, that, because Pedro wasn't in this season, but knowing who he is as a person, I could feel the Pedro in the energy of just him being like, just like continuing on. And it's just a very, very quick bit of like physical humor and very Star Wars. Like, that's a Han Solo moment. Yeah. That's I love that. Favorite eps moments?
Sam. You hated the whole show.
The credits.
The whole thing terrible. No, I'll probably go with episode 5 as well. That was probably the one that I felt like I got the most out of it. I did enjoy this last one as well, but I just felt like it was a bit soft for a finale, so I'm going to give it to number 5. Yep. But probably one of my favorite moments, it's such like a cliche fucking thing, but in episode 1, and I know that's not like the best of episodes, but
still good moments.
When we think that the kid is like a young Din, and then he flies in to save them in his ship, and like the theme's just blaring. It was just a classic like hero moment, and I was like, fuck yeah, that's sick. And that was a moment where I was like, yeah, the Mandalorian's back, and then by the end of it I was like, what the fuck happened?
Where'd he go?
That was and like I think I do also have a very like a soft spot for like the droid chase. I just thought like the kind of I guess the direction around that was like really like cool, and it looked really
that episode is so close to being my favorite. If there's just I have a few too many nitpicks with it to the point where I can't be like, but like there's nearly a really complete like anthology episode of that. I think it's just the fact that they had to shoehorn the other stuff in. That
I definitely came out of that thinking it was my favorite, but I'll still fall on Ep 5.
Yeah.
Ben,
honestly, like, my favorite episode is episode 3. Do it have to be from these 4, or are we talking overall?
No, from
season 1 if you want. Like.
No. My favorite episode of this season is episode 3, which is the one mostly on Coruscant. I still think that is a fantastic I mean, it's probably because I like Andor so much, and it's the most Andor episode of this show, but it's also got the Mando vibe to it, that it's a little bit swashbuckly and like a little bit pulpy in a way that Andor never was. And I think that also, as we talked about, the ship fight at the start of it with Bo-Katan and Mando for the little bit they are in the episode is also just fantastic.
The like airdrop to get to the N1. So cool.
And I think the story that is told in that episode, even separate from all the cloning stuff, which I think they're setting up something cool there. I honestly think it's going to ultimately culminate in a pretty satisfying story that ranges from episode 2 in Camino all the way through to episode 9 and however the fuck we get to Palpatine. Like, episode 9 will still be bad, but I think the overall story will line up pretty nice. And jury's still out on that, but as terms of what the episode is doing, showing people who have worked for the Empire, and it's showing people who have had to kind of like realign their lives to work in the New Republic, and also showing just the lack of change that happens on Coruscant and all these different aspects of this post Return of the Jedi world, I think is really cool. And like, it may not fit well within this season, but I think it's the best episode of the show this season, similar to how Book of Boba Fett's best episodes were the Mando episodes. But yeah, I love that. And yeah, I mean, I would have also talked about the pirate episode, but you guys said that. Other shout out goes to episode 7. I think that probably is favorite moment. You know what? My favorite moment is actually episode 2. And it's when that weird ass cyborg creature comes along and starts sucking out his blood. I don't know. That was like unexpectedly dark for Star Wars.
Yeah.
But it's the one bit
when it showed the blood, I was like, oh my god.
But it's the one bit of the season I keep coming back to, and I'm like, that was fucking cool. Not have a lot of relevance for the rest of the show other than the Darksaber thing, which not even relevant at the end of the show. But yeah, that's probably my favorite moment. I don't know.
Actually, like I talk about him not grabbing a gun. Let me just, I get a B moment.
Yeah.
My B moment is the entire R5 sequence from this episode where he's getting pestered by droids and he's peeking around the fucking corner. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
It's so adorable. And it's what we talked about, Ben. It's setting up Chopper so that people aren't freaked out by what Chopper is like.
I love that.
They're like, look how silly he is.
I also love that it alludes to how fucking useless those mouse droids are. That it like
they're just like hitting him at his feet, not doing anything.
But it's like the siren goes off and you're like, surely that's alerting someone to its presence. And it's like, no, it's just going to get some more. And then it goes to get some more. And then it goes,
just gets an army of
and
them.
it's like, I'm just going to fly away.
Yeah.
But then as like R5 like flies off, you see one just like fall off the edge.
So dumb. Oh god, I loved it so much. And I loved it because it was the moment the show realigned to being like, hey, remember Din is the guy that you like following and that he's this fun Star Wars protagonist. Like hearing a character say R5, like bring up the shields, it's like, fuck, I love Star Wars, man.
It did feel very we're on the Death Star, we're on the Star Destroyer in like
it
original trilogy
even had the
Star
same
Wars.
wall panels.
It felt a lot like one of those scenes with like R2 or something. I think that's good.
Totally. Which is very sweet. I mean, this whole episode, I think one of the things I saw before going into it was that we would get almost a New Hope feeling finale, and I definitely think they went there. Definitely felt like a bit of a like destroy the Death Star. Everyone has a little ceremony at the end. It's kind of an open-ended. We'll never make another movie again. But like I definitely see it as being it's a New Hope for a new kind of story. Which is cool.
Can I just mention a quick other moment, just very quickly? From episode
we're already
3.
an hour and 20 minutes. Let's just
keep going.
It's not really like a moment, but more so like a hidden moment, I guess.
Oh, okay.
But in episode 3, when the scientists and he's chatting to Abby from The Last of Us, in like the little courtyard, it has to be. Like, come on, man. When they're chatting, and I can't remember what they're talking about, but apparently mixed in with the music, you can hear the theme for Snoke.
Snoke. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
cool.
Apparently, which like I didn't realize until after I watched it, and then I saw it in like a video where people like hear things you may have missed.
Comparing it, cool.
And it's like very subtle. Like you have to really like pay attention, but it is there like in minor beats.
Cool.
So surely that's leading to something.
Got another moment.
Surely.
The last one, I promise. We got to see Ahmed Best, Keller and Beck show up in the do you know about this, Sam? The actor for Jar Jar Binks.
What? How the fuck did I forget that? Yeah, that's another really good moment. I love that.
The fact that he shows up and now has a meaningful place within like Star Wars canon is very cool. And I'm happy about that. And I'm also happy we did not see Thrawn. Part of me was, I think, really wanted to see a little tease, but I'm also really happy they left it for the Ahsoka show because I think it'll work better within that. And I think having, as you said, having it culminate out the story of these 3 seasons with Gideon instead of teasing a bigger bad again, I think is probably the correct move. And so I'm glad we didn't get that in the end. I'm at least, the nerd part of me is happy we got the name drop.
Yeah, again, another like a very meta commentary of everyone being like, "Where's Thrawn? Well, you said that we were going to see Thrawn. Where's Thrawn?" It's like, God, you fucking nerds.
Forget that he literally says, Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Where is he? And then someone's like, well, his reveal's got to be pretty good, hey? It's like, this show is so silly.
Yeah.
But some of us loved it. That was Mandalorian Season 3, Part 2. Really the whole season, we got into it. You have all let us know in the Discord what you've thought about it, and it's been very fun reading along with comments, reading the parts that weren't spoilers and being like, I wonder what that's about, like before I watched it.
I do it too.
Yeah.
I have a scroll through before I watch, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. What's that? what's Milk? What's Dolphin talking about there?
I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I just love Star Wars. I'm so happy, like, Will, you and I have been able to talk so much about it recently, and we've been able to drag Sam in as well. I'm just like, I think I'm just really happy that I can talk about Star Wars and enjoy it again, and that not be a thing that gets me hatred on the internet.
Yeah, totally. And it's not over. In literally just over a week, we get to play Star Wars with the Jedi Survivor comes out. Literally next Friday.
To play Star Wars, and then a week later we get Star Wars Vision Season 2.
Yep, it's not stopping,
Ben's
man.
living his best life at the moment.
I'm so happy. Like, I'm genuine. There's joy in me that you can see in my face.
I can see you about to cry. It's there.
It's been so fun. It's been so fun chatting about it with you guys. If you want to see Ben and I's thought on the first part, that video and podcast, or wherever you're watching videos and podcasts, you can check it out. We also, the three of us, talked about Star Wars Celebration and all the cool things that came out of that. So please do check that out as well. If you are seeing... Yes. Bad Batch. We talked about Bad Batch. Wasn't it nice having a happy finale, Ben?
It was really
Wasn't
nice.
that just a nice,
It was really nice.
comparatively? Fucking hell. If you want to see all those things and you want to know where those things are, you can go to etto.card.co. It's double R in the card, and all the links to all the things there. And that's enough talking. It's 11:07. We should go to bed.
I've got 50 more minutes of Fast 9 to watch.
Good.
I haven't seen that one yet.
I should catch up. Who's the villain? Who's the new cameo in that one?
John Cena.
Is that John Cena?
John Cena?
It's John Cena.
John
Yeah.
Cena.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Sick. All right.
And he's back for X.
Yeah. And he's got a son. Oh, we'll talk about it elsewhere. Thanks everybody for watching. I've been Will.
Family.
I've been Sam.
There we go. Don't buy any Mandalorian merch until the shows are over.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.